Alright guys, so we are about 3 days away from the early access launch of Dune Awakening. Today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the in-game. I know recently we got a ton of new information going over some changes in the in-game. This includes new in-game PvE activities, weekly resets and kind of how they work, spice collection stuff that a lot of players been interested in, faction rewards, and just a whole bunch of new information about the in-game. With that said, let's dive into the news. So first things first, let's talk about the in-game PvP, PvE activities, because one of the biggest things I see when it comes to what players think about the game, or at least concerned about the game, is the PvP activities and being forced to play in the PvP in the deep desert zones. Now recently the devs did do a live stream where they went over the in-game and gave players a better understanding of what to expect, and while the in-game is going to be very heavily focused with PvP activity, there are going to be areas that's separated by essentially a shield wall where players who are in the more PvE mindset are more welcome to go do that rather than being forced into PvP activities. Now I am very familiar with the game, take that as you will, and from what I know of the game, this seems to align with what the dev seems to say, where the PvE activities are going to put you not necessarily on par with the PvP players, but in the sense that you'll be able to accomplish pretty much whatever you want to accomplish as you progress into the game. Now, without saying too much, I just want to be very clear that if you are a player who's interested in only engaging from PvE perspectives, you're going to be pretty happy to see that you're going to have the ability to jump into these shield zones and be able to participate in the deep desert, where you don't feel like you're going to be pressured by the guys who have a pretty strong interest in just staying there and playing all day and giving players as much as a hard time. I know how these games kind of work because I have like 10,000 hours in Ark Survival Evolved, and the reality is it's going to be you and your friends against like a massive mega guild of like 50 people with no life. That's just the nature of these kind of games, and having the PvE opportunity to go to these shield walls and just continue to do pretty much essentially everything that the PvP activities allow, but on a smaller scale, is going to be very refreshing for players, and I think this is going to be one of the things that actually keep players into the game. With that said, this area does stretch over 24 kilometers, which is going to be the location where you're going to get a lot of loot if you're not interested in engaging with the deep desert PvP side of things. From what the devs said in their last live stream though, they said that there's going to be smaller pockets of spice, there's also going to be a ton of high-end encounters, and then there's going to be like different like dungeons and things of the sort that's going to be focused in those PvE zones. So again, just giving you guys a little bit of a heads up so you can rejoice. There's going to be plenty of PvE activities for you guys to engage in and not be forced into the sweaty PvP that I'm going to be kind of thrusted into. With that in mind, there were some interesting information in regards to the weekly reset, and for those of you who are maybe on the more PvP side, what to expect from the deep desert. Now first off, according to what the dev said, there's going to be a reset somewhere around Tuesday and Wednesday. That's kind of what they're going with for now, and this is going to essentially wipe the entire map clean. This includes bases, is going to be actually changing the entire zone. So there's a part where they talk about how every single week things are going to be changing. It's kind of, I guess, procedurally generated to some degree, but essentially camps are going to come up that weren't once there. Research facilities are going to change. There's going to be different pockets of different kind of spice or things of the sort, and then the map is going to be completely fresh. Now the beautiful thing about this place is it's going to have half the cost when it comes to like actually building out a base. I think in general you're going to want to have a forward operating base, like maybe right on the entrance of the deep desert. I think that's going to be most ideal, but fortunately it's not going to necessarily be very hard to like build up. It's going to be about half the cost despite it being wiped. Now the beautiful thing about Dune Awakening, from what I can tell, is that there's not really going to be any major base PvP. Like it seems more focused around player engagement in like maybe vehicles and flying situations on the ground, that kind of like guerrilla style gameplay, rather than shooting a rocket at your base when you're logged out. That's kind of like what Ark Survival Evolved was kind of more like, or Rust was like. In Dune Awakening, it seems significantly more of you're gonna jump out, you're gonna come out, and then you're gonna blow up people's ships, or you're gonna blow up people's vehicles and things of the sort. That's gonna be the more mainstream type PvP. With that in mind, it does look like the Deep Desert weekly reset is gonna be something that's gonna keep it a little bit fresh, gonna make the world a little bit different. It's not gonna be deterministic, and that's kind of nice in my opinion. I know they did show some stuff where like someone could go around and map out the place and they can sell the map or something to other factions. I don't really see that thing being viable because If you've ever played a survival game, that's just not the case. The mega guilds are gonna already have all the things that they want. They're gonna have all the things that can scout and everything. So it's not gonna be something like the most dominant guild is gonna worry about. And I don't really feel like the most casual players are gonna really go out and actively need that kind of thing. So while in practice that sounds really cool because they did show it, and I could see some use cases for maybe like the in-between player, but generally speaking, but I don't see something like this being super relevant in the actual core gameplay loop, especially after like week 1. Now in addition to this, they did actually reveal one of the ways that you can actually collect some of the spice. And while this is again is going to be probably a little bit more PvP focused, this is something that's gonna be something that you can engage in, because according to what the devs said, that like even Haga Basin, like the base starting zone, will still have these massive spice crash. I really don't know the lore of Dune Awakening. I think it's just like these giant spice meteors or something, or these spice zones. And basically Haga Basin will have these as well, but they're going to probably be a little bit more smaller scale. But anyway, basically they showed the breakdown of how players are going to have to engage with this mechanic to harvest all the individual spice. Of course, they're going to have a flyer that's going to bring them in, and then there's going to be a harvester that's going to directly harvest all the spice. Now obviously you're going to be having a vehicle on the sand actively making noise, harvesting all the different spice and things of the sort. And in the footage that they showed that the scouts were kind of keeping tabs on the worms, and then they were using the thumpers to actively draw the aggro away from wherever the spice operation was essentially happening. So this was really cool. I never watched the Dune Awakening movies, and people were saying this is kind of how they do it in the movies. I'll probably watch the movie before the game launches. We got like 2 or 3 days, so I'll go watch the movie after this. But yeah, it was really cool. Like for me, this seems like a really dope thing where the players have to like cooperate together to get the spice, and then the worms are going to be a consistent threat. And I really like how this is like set up. It really does feel like a team situation, because you don't really see this kind of stuff in like other survival games where you have to use your ships and you have to use your tactics to stop a force that literally can't be stopped. I mean, that's beautiful. That's a very unique dynamic that you don't see in survival games like that very often. So this is really cool. I figured we talk about it because I think this is really cool, and this is something that PvE and PvP players are going to have to deal with. You're going to have to coordinate together, you're going to have to play well together, and if you're in a PvP situation, you're going to have to deal with worms, and you're going to have to deal with players. I think it's going to make PvP pretty dynamic. It's going to make PvE interesting. I really like this whole system. It looks cool. With that in mind, beyond just looking at like the deep desert and things of the sort, we did get to see some more information on some of the house rewards. Again, I'm not familiar with the houses. Maybe someone who is very familiar with the lore of Dune Awakening understand this, but essentially there's different houses that have different missions that are required for you to essentially get rewards. You're going to be forced to join a specific faction, and if your faction's the most dominant, your faction is going to be able to enact laws or enact changes around the entire map. Obviously this is going to be really in favor of the PvP players, but I know there's going to be a lot of PvE players, and there's going to be different missions and stuff that you can use to kind of influence the world as well, by essentially doing like these different kind of contracts that you and your guild can kind of complete. And this kind of rewards players who are not necessarily focused on PvP. Honestly, looking at the list that we saw, a lot of it was PvE focused. It wasn't just killing players, it was killing NPCs, delivering different kind of goods. Kind of saw a little bit of this in the demo where it kind of showed us you can deliver like different contracts, but this was like a little bit more large scale. And once again, this is kind of tying into like the faction system a little bit more, not necessarily rewarding only PvP players. Now, I will say this though, guys, I do like the fact that Funcom is trying their best to make it so that PvP and PvE can coexist. Obviously, like things like where they go around and survey the map and they sell it to players, like that probably won't work, but I still respect it, because it's like you don't see that in a lot of survival games. It's either you do PvP and you get your ass kicked, or you don't engage in it in the PvE server and you just PvE. And I really like that they're trying to put effort forth. That's really cool. And the fact that they don't have bases being destroyed, I think that really does encourage players to actually go in. You can build a fob in the deep desert, not necessarily worry about players, and if you do come out and you try to fight with them, which I mean, it's a massive desert, I find it hard to believe you're going to be that hard to do, like they're going to be that hard on you. You still have a fighting chance to actually try out the PvP. So just wanted to throw that out there. I do think that's really cool. So I really hope players actually give the PvP a bit of a chance if it's not too sweaty. I expect it probably won't be too sweaty. I see that the region is so massive, I find it hard to believe it will be that sweaty, but again, I haven't played, so we'll have to see. With that in mind, there was one more thing I wanted to talk about quickly, and that is the faction rewards. They did show a very brief section where they talked about the different faction rewards. This is not the most important thing, but it did like morph some of the vehicles. Like functionally, the vehicles were exactly the same, but they did give a very unique look. And if you and your guild is like really steep into that individual faction, that's going to be really cool to see like an army of scouts flying with a very unique, distinctive look. You know, they're part of the really high up faction. That'll be something. I think that have some gameplay implications as well, which is really dope. But nonetheless, there's going to be faction rewards that are cosmetic as well. Overall, that is all we have to talk about today, though, when it comes to Dune Awakening. Obviously, I'm going to be covering this game pretty in depth. I probably will be covering this game for quite a few months, if I'm being completely honest. I don't really see anything coming up this year that I'm very interested in other than Light No Fire. And Dune Awakening being that survival genre is going to be something I'm a big fan of. So with that said, guys, let me know what you think about the PvP PvE situation in Dune Awakening. I know a lot of people are having a little bit of a pushback when it comes to that. I know how PvP can be, especially being a seasoned survivalist player. I know it can be really annoying, but yeah, let me know what you guys think. I'll see you in the next one very soon, guys. Take it easy.